This is Soul Soching. Soch is the Urdu word for thought, and our purpose is to understand our inner thoughts that ail our souls. We are dedicated to addressing the taboo of mental health in the South Asian community and promoting the idea of paying it forward. So join us as we explore our minds and soul. We are Soul Soching. Hey guys, Ariba here. I am so excited to share this episode with you guys today. Our topic was relationships, and we had a guest with us, Dr. Nura Mowzoon, and I think that you guys will all absolutely love this episode just as much as myself, Wafa, and Ikra did. We learned so much. We walked away feeling like we just learned a crap ton about ourselves and how we are in relationships, whether that's romantic, family, friends. We pretty much covered the entire spectrum and then some. So we really hope you guys enjoy the episode today. Just a little bit about Dr. Mowzoon. She completed her doctoral and master's degrees in marriage and family therapy, and she also has specialization in medical family therapy and a postdoctoral certificate in hypnotherapy. She's really cool. Completed her bachelor's degree in family studies and child development with a minor in psychology, which she got from Arizona State University. She's presented at conferences around the country. She's a contributor to the Huffington Post, and she's also a published author in the academic journal The Qualitative Review. Currently, she's an instructor at ASU. She teaches classes in the social sciences, focusing on courtship, marriage, family life, race, and diversity issues. And she also works as a couples coach based in Phoenix, Arizona. So as you can tell, Dr. Mowzoon has a lot of experience in relationships, ranging in all kinds of relationships, and that's basically what we talked to her about, and I really hope that you guys all enjoyed the episode. Definitely let us know what you think, and be sure to follow us on our social media at Soul Soching on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Enjoy the episode, guys.
Well, welcome, Dr. Nura.
Thank you.
So excited to have you on with us at Soul Soching. And just an FYI, guys, this is Ikra, and we have
Ariba. And this is Wafa.
Awesome.
Welcome.
Yes,
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And we're really excited because, as you know, Valentine's Day is around the corner. And we had a lot of questions for you from our followers regarding relationships.
Okay.
So one of the first questions we had was, in your expert opinion, what would be a good dynamic of a healthy relationship between you and a significant other?
It's like,
it's like very
in
vague.
a nutshell.
What's
a
in
good
If
relationship?
we lived in a perfect world.
Please tell us how to.
In a
Please tell us
nutshell.
how to score a man.
How do you relationship?
Yeah.
Wait, is the question how do you score a man?
I mean, that's another podcast.
Yeah.
We'll talk
That'll
later.
be off the record.
Off the record, yeah. We'll talk later.
Yeah.
So you're saying basically like what does a healthy relationship look like?
Yeah. There's some three factors,
You
three
just
important elements.
dove right into it.
Yeah.
3 elements I would say. Healthy conflict.
Okay.
So not the absence of conflict, just healthy conflict when it's present. Consistent vulnerability, and continued courtship.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Definitely like different
Yeah.
answers, like compared to like what you would see
Normally
in, like,
hear.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, definitely.
Make sure he loves you a lot.
Yeah, I feel like
Or
it's
like
usually
generic.
very
Or, you know,
like
like,
sentimental.
honesty and like all that stuff,
Which is important.
Yeah.
All
Important
that
too.
nonsense,
Yeah,
like
all that-
honesty.
Because especially being vulnerable, I think people
Yeah.
have a really hard time being vulnerable in all kinds of
Yeah, for
relationships.
sure.
And so I think when we ask someone what a healthy relationship looks like, they don't even think of that, which is kind
Yeah.
of sad.
Yeah. And I
You-
liked. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I liked how you brought up healthy conflict. So
Yeah.
can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, healthy conflict is just basically not letting yourselves fight dirty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too often, too often we eventually get comfortable with the person that we're dating.
Yeah.
Or even family, close
Mhm.
friends, and we let ourselves be kind of the ugliest version of ourselves rather than the best version of ourselves. And I think it's when we let ourselves we give ourselves permission to be ugly, that things start to deteriorate. It doesn't mean that you can't be comfortable, but like you shouldn't, it's never okay to be on bad behavior because the other person just can't go anywhere. So healthy conflict really is, it just involves approaching issues as if you're a team, not opponents.
Yeah, like one against the other.
Yeah, because I think that's what happens a lot of times is we're in it to win it, and like I'm gonna show you that like my way is the right way, and I'm gonna win, and I you need to say you're sorry, you need to just admit it, I was right, you were wrong, like we say this stuff all the time, and it belittles the partner, and really in an ideal relationship, like you're a team, you approach things as a team, and so even when you have conflict, your conflict should be you as a team versus the issue, not you as individuals versus each other.
I agree.
So that's, in a nutshell, that's how, you know, but that could be its own podcast as well.
I feel like all these topics.
Make notes.
No, I think it comes down to ego, right? Not letting our egos get to the best of us. And I like how you said it's not you against each other, it's you, or
so
like
together,
it's both of you against the problem, right?
Yeah.
So I really like how you brought that up.
Yeah, because I feel like that also brings out people's insecurities. Like if you just target your partner or whoever it is you're talking to, you're making them feel like, okay, you know, whatever it is you're arguing about. So I feel like that also pulls out so many insecurities, because then it just starts, that's where it really starts to get dirty, and it's like, well, you're like this, and I'm like this, or whatever.
And then like even recognizing the problem itself, it's like that pride of like I'm not going to admit like that I'm wrong, you know. So,
oh, pride, it'll kill it. It will kill a relationship. It's the worst. Like probably the silver bullet. I mean, I guess I say this a lot, but one of the silver bullets of any relationship is, well, I don't know if that's the right phrase, the golden ticket. I say that a lot too. Anyway, a good thing for relationships is being able to say you're sorry. Like nothing will disarm an argument faster than somebody who's genuinely sorry. Like you just can't. You can't stay mad.
Because you know? I mean, then it also means that that person understands that there's an understanding that develops then, right? Like they know that, you know, they're saying they were sorry, they know they did something wrong, and they acknowledge it versus like completely brushing it off. Because then the person that they're arguing with feels even more invalid than they might have to start with. So
totally.
Good.
I have one of the questions, I guess it kind of goes with what we're saying, but how do you balance compromising for another person in a healthy way versus identifying when it's not healthy?
Well, we just go deep like right away.
Our like followers know what they want.
And they request it. There's no warm up. So what's the balance of like compromise versus like giving too much and like sacrificing too much?
Like when is it too much and essentially maybe going down the toxic or...
Yeah, I think I think really it starts to become unhealthy when it starts to chip away at your own sense of nobility, your own sense of what's healthy and what's good. So giving and sacrifice it's great, like it's good for any relationship, but there has to be balance,
right?
And I think too often in relationships it's easy to fall into the role of like the giver and the taker. And so I think in a healthy dynamic both of you are equally giving, right? And I'm not to say that like you should only give if you're receiving, but it should be balanced in the sense that like, you know, there will be phases where one of you is more able to be more present and stronger while the other one just kind of needs to hold on to you as a life raft for a minute, and then it'll switch. But when you are constantly giving to the point where you are now depleted and you're chipping away at your sense of self-worth and it's affecting your sense of self-worth, that's when the balance is gone, and that's when it's no longer healthy. And you also don't want to be with someone who is okay with that.
Yeah, someone
absolutely.
that's comfortable with you losing yourself, essentially.
Yeah, that's
yeah. And I feel like these things can be applied to like not just like a partner, but also like in friendships or in relationships, like with your family or like coworkers as well.
Yeah. And I think it's also it's important for us to kind of be able to look inward and be like, what is motivating me to do this? Because we're really good at lying to ourselves too. Yeah. And so, you know, we can tell ourselves like, oh, I'm just a giver. I'm just a giver. I don't need anything in return. And like that might be true, but like in your quietest moments, are you giving because you're hoping the other person won't leave?
Yeah.
Like what's going on that's causing this to happen? Like, or are you like really strong and independent and you would do this regardless of how they reacted? Like, are you doing it based on how they respond, or are you doing it because it's right? Like, those are two different modes of reasoning.
I feel like that's a hard discussion that you have to have with yourself.
Yeah.
Especially if you find yourself really sad in a relationship that's supposed to make you happy. Which is like most of all your relationships. Especially with your significant other too, because you're supposed to be a team.
Yeah.
So it's not just a give and give road and a take and take road. So
the worst feeling is being in a relationship and feeling alone.
Yeah.
That's not the purpose of it at all.
No.
Do you feel like from there is where a certain level of codependence, because I definitely want to talk about codependency. Do you feel like when it is a relationship like that, is that kind of the start of where a codependent relationship can kind of stem from?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because a codependency is always very interesting to me, because I remember the first time like that topic ever came up in a conversation, I thought of it as like, is it necessarily completely a bad thing, or would you say that there's some advantages of it?
There's a difference between mutual dependency and codependency.
Yeah.
Like mutual dependency is balanced and both people are strong and independent and secure. Yeah. Regardless of the other person's ups and downs.
Right.
Codependency, your well-being is dependent on the other person's well-being.
Yeah.
And like your happiness is dependent on where they are, and it's entangled. What was that? Wait, did I forget your question?
No, you were.
Oh, okay.
Just like, No, that was
my
right.
My brain just died.
Yeah, no, because I was just wondering, like, you were explaining it fine, because I was just wondering, is it always a bad thing? But you pointed out the mutual dependency, and I think that's an important thing to know, because I feel like people immediately, when you say codependency, a lot of people, at least in my experience, people are like, oh my God, I'm not codependent. No. Yeah. But it's good to know that there's another description for something that's more healthier, like mutual dependency.
Yeah, but it's only healthier when the two people involved are healthy.
Okay.
Like you can't just change the label and say, well, we're mutually dependent.
Yeah.
Like codependence is you complete me, I am you, you are me, and I'm nothing without you. Mutual dependence is I love you, I want to be with you, but I don't have to have you, and I will survive without you. So there's a big shift. So so you can't interchange the words. No, they're not interchangeable. They're one is healthy, one is toxic.
Yeah. That's good to know.
Another question for you. How can you allow you and or your partner to be more vulnerable and be your authentic selves? So I know we kind of covered that a little bit, but I guess...
How do you allow it?
Yeah.
I think the first thing that you need to do is model it yourself. Like, I've said before, you can't ask your partner to behave in a way that you're not willing to behave. So you have to be the change you want to see. So you show what it is that you want them to show, and then when they do take that leap of faith and they do take that step of vulnerability to connect with you, you embrace it, you handle it with care, you treat it to us to see when our partner is putting in that effort. People to see when we're trying. We like people to see when things are good. We like to be seen. And so when you take this leap of vulnerability, it helps when your partner acknowledges it in some way. It doesn't mean that it has to be this like, oh my God, you were vulnerable. Like, it like a baby taking its first steps.
Yeah.
But you know, it shows in how you handle it. You know, even if you squeeze our hand and you're like, it really means a lot to me that you let me in. Like, I can't tell you how touched I am that you trusted me with this. Like, you just, you know, and then it's your turn.
Yeah.
So
it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I guess like one thing that was always on my mind was like back to the whole codependency thing and just like toxic behavior and toxic relationships. I think one thing is like not just in relationship but like with a partner, but like as with family as well. What are some signs that you can kind of like point out like, okay, I'm in a toxic environment, and like what are some red flags? Like, I know it's a very generic question, but what are some like specific elements that you can kind of like seek out and maybe just like say, okay, you know what, maybe I need to take a step back. And like sometimes you can't even like remove yourself from that environment, you know.
It's difficult.
It's difficult, you know. So like how would you go about it then, or what are some signs, and then how would you go about it?
So what are the signs of toxic relationships, and then how would you go about changing it? Every question you guys are asking is its own podcast.
I know.
I think at the core of it is lack of respect for boundaries. So a toxic relationship, a toxic dynamic just does not respect boundaries that we have or that we should have. And so there's an insistence on like, it needs to be this way. It has to be the way that I see it. You have to agree with me. If you don't agree with me, you don't love me, you don't respect me. There's a lot of like, if then this, like your behavior is a reflection of my worth, or your behavior is a reflection of your love for me. So there's a lot of what's the word I'm looking for?
I feel like I know what
almost like an ultimatum or like
is it kind of like a reward system?
Sort of, yeah, it
like,
could be.
You do this, I will then love you this much.
Conditional.
Conditional. There you go.
It's very, very conditional. And so it's usually seen through lack of boundaries and conditional love.
So how would you like be able to remove yourself from that situation?
So this is where it gets really difficult, because usually you're in that situation because like usually people in that situation have been in that situation for a long time, often because it's just like what their parents adjusted them to or raised them with, and so it's what's familiar to them. And so what happens is this role that you have like has a script. So when you have this role of like dutiful daughter, dutiful sister, dutiful wife, or pleasing, or whatever the word is that you want to use, that's your role. And with it comes the script of you saying and doing very specific things in order to make sure everybody's happy and like you don't rock the boat.
Right.
And what happens when you realize that you need to change the scripts is now everybody else's script has to change too. Because you're like, this doesn't serve me anymore. This is no longer what's healthy. This is no longer what's okay. And I need a rewrite. And so my script is going to be a little bit different now. And all of a sudden everybody around you is like, well, that's what? That doesn't fit with my script now too. And so now everybody's script changes. And so for a while, there's going to be this push for you to keep your scripts. Because it's what's familiar. And go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and that's the most difficult part. Because it's like you want that change for yourself, but you're so stuck in that environment where you feel like no matter how hard you try, you just can't get out, and then it becomes like this vicious cycle.
And it's hard because that script it's what's familiar, and what's familiar is what's home. And so there's a lot of discomfort that can come with changing it, and it's so easy to just fall back into it because you know it. So it's about being really persistent and very strong in yourself too. Like it's gonna take a lot of consistency and determination for that new script to take hold. It will, but it only will if you're consistent with it. You can't fluctuate.
And I'm sure everyone's timeline looks different too.
Yeah.
Because everyone has different situations too. So I think that's probably another good thing to note, that change is not going to happen overnight.
Right.
It might take a year or a few months. Again, it depends on personality, where you are with emotional and mental health too.
And I like the description you gave of script, because I feel like I run into that issue a lot, because I'll be like, I'm the type of person, I'll be like, okay, I'll do whatever you need, like very willing to help. And then there came up time in my life where I suddenly was like, you know what? I'm going to do things for not every single person that comes along. I'm going to do things for people that would reciprocate or would, be willing to do those things for me. And it was an interesting, very interesting reaction that I got, because suddenly, like, I was getting yelled at a lot more, and I'm like, I don't understand, right? Like, I was like, I don't get it. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. And it actually makes sense when you think about it from the script perspective, because while I've changed mine, I haven't necessarily addressed it to the other people, and it's still like that, where I'll have to kind of continuously say, like, this is kind of where I'm at right now, or I've been working on myself and my mental health, and that has taught me XYZ. So I actually really like this script description, because I feel like that makes a lot of sense.
I was so connecting with that. I was reflecting back on all my past, like, people I had to deal with. I'm like,
I'm like,
they'll even say it. They'll be like, this isn't you.
Yeah.
You're not. What are you? Who are you? I don't know you anymore. I don't recognize you anymore. And
You've changed.
And
I'm trying to change.
I hope so.
And like, I feel like for me, I was more verbal about it. Like, I kept saying, like, you know how you said, like, no, like, I'm more talkative about it, because I feel like the more I talk about it out loud, the more it's gonna get to everyone. Like, it's gonna, like, the point's gonna be proven across. Like, okay, she is being serious. She's taking this seriously. So,
and then on the note of talking, I have a few questions for you regarding communication. Because I feel like that's such a huge, and like we all know, it's such a huge aspect of any relationship. And this was actually, I saw Dr. Nura at an amazing event that she facilitated. And I didn't get to ask some of the questions, but my friend and I were discussing.
You're like, but I will ask them now.
I will ask them now.
I will get my questions in. Screw you, Pat Ashley. Maybe delete that.
We'll tag him on that.
We will totally tag him. We gave him a shout out.
We're talking about you.
Good one. All right. So communication, just like there's a diverse set of people with different type of personalities, there's definitely different type of communication styles. So for example, like Wafa right here, she's more of like, hey, I have like a problem or something, or I just saw this, I'm going to make sure I talk about it before it builds up. I'm kind of the opposite. I'll be like, okay, I had to deal with it on my own. I'm not going to confront it or whatever. I've been growing a little bit, right, Wafa?
Yeah, she has. We both kind of like picked up. You feed off of each other.
Yeah.
So.
But, and I've had people like just talking to people, my friends, for example, they're in, a marriage, and they have different communication styles. One's more direct, the other one's more kind of like passive aggressive. So how do you bridge gaps between communication styles? Because
being passive aggressive is not a
well, not passive. Well, I guess that's the wrong word
I think
to use.
like when someone approaches you with the situation, you kind of just shut down. Like, is that
or
considered
they
passive
just stay
aggressive?
quiet and they internalize it, and then they're like, I'd rather not say something, otherwise why would I say something?
No, passive aggressive is more like you kind of get revenge in really unrelated ways. Like if I cook you dinner and you're like, oh, it's the like, let me just add a little bit of salt. I'll be like, oh, really? Salt? Next time I'll put like a pound of salt in your food. That's passive aggressive. Rather than me being like, well, it kind of hurt my feelings that you said it didn't have enough salt. So passive aggressive is
definitely not the way to go, guys.
No. It's a very unhealthy. A lot of us do it, especially if we come from cultures or families that have a lot of pride. So very prideful cultures have a lot of passive aggressiveness. Because they're like, oh, really? Watch this. And then you like,
a lot in the South Asian community.
So many times where my dad will put salt, and my mom's like, really? Like, after like 30 years of marriage, like, we still need salt.
I mean, that was meant to be a dumb example, but I guess it does happen a lot.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
I got a ton of
You are
stories about
talking
that.
to Asians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as different communication styles, because passive aggressiveness is a conflict style,
Right. Okay.
but communication styles are more like you guys were saying, I need time versus I want to talk about it right now.
Yeah.
I mean, without a doubt, it's easier on marriages when the two people have the similar, like, compatible styles.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just kind of a dance that you have to learn over time, and it goes back to this idea of humility and being able to do things a little bit differently. So I'm like you. Like, I need to talk about it right away. I can't let it build up. I need to just
I'm
get
like
it out.
that. Oh my god.
And then I won't think about it again.
Yeah.
Me too.
If it's resolved, yeah. And my parents are kind of like, my dad is a talker. In the moment he needs to talk about it, and then he will completely forget. And my mom is like, I need time, and she'll take
That's me.
yeah. And so it's a dance that you figure out, like, and you try to meet in the middle somewhere. So maybe if she needs like 5 days to process and cool off, she'll take 3. And if he wants to talk about it right away, he has to wait like a day. Like, you just, you have to respect each other's space.
Yeah.
But you also can talk about it. Like, it's really helpful to talk about it, because if you have one person who's like, can we talk about this right now? And the other person who's like, I'm really upset, I need space. The person who needs space needs to tell the other person how long they're going to take that space for and when they'll be back. Otherwise, you just feel abandoned.
Yeah, you're just kind of waiting.
So take your space, but you do owe it to your partner to tell them when you'll be back.
Yeah.
Do you think this kind, like, meeting in the middle, when you apply it to like friendships or maybe not even family, but friendships, like how do you deal with something like that? Because obviously when you're married, like you said, it's a very different situation. Now that can happen with a friendship, and I guess no one really owes it to each other technically, depending on what your friendship's like or what people think or however it is. So how can you go about doing that in a friendship?
Well, I think if it goes back to having a strong sense of self-worth, because if we are secure in ourselves and we don't have codependency in our friendships either, when our friend needs time, we realize that's not a reflection of us, it's a reflection of their process.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you are happy to give them the time to figure out what they need to figure out and get to a healthy headspace to talk.
Yeah.
But like, how long is too long? Because like, I'm that type of a person where, like, how you said, like, you need to ask, like, how long, like, do you need to process? So, but sometimes people need a little bit longer than usual. And like, I'm that type of person, I'm like, I'm waiting, like, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And so like, how can I, like, I'll say, like, how can I kind of like control myself until like their processing is done? Because for me, my mind is like, okay, like, I need to, like, I want to solve this, like, let's talk about it. But in the meantime, like, when they're processing, what can I do?
Whatever you would be doing with your life. I mean,
I would overthink probably. I'm just
that's not good. No, but see, the thing is that might be a sign that, like, there's something there that could be addressed within you. Like, like, if you're overthinking excessively, then that means you're a little bit too attached to their process. But if you're like, I love you, I'm here for you, we can talk whenever you're ready, but I have a life that I have to live. Life has to go on. Like, you cannot stop. And that goes back to codependency. If your life comes to a screeching halt every time your other person is having an issue, that's not healthy. And then on the other side of it, if you're the person that needs the time, I think you have to be really honest about, like, are you taking time to cool off, or are you now punishing? Like, because there's a difference there too. Like, it's one thing to cool off, it's another thing to be like, and now I'm punishing you. Like, now you miss me even more. And that's not healthy.
And I think that's, like, with me, that was the progress, because before I used to overthink a lot, and then just recently, like, I noticed about myself that, if someone needs to process their feelings, okay, you do that, but I'm still gonna like live my life. I'm gonna let you do you, but like I can't worry about like whatever decision you come to, or whatever you know. I'll be here to talk. So
I think. Sorry.
No. That's it. That's pretty much.
But I think it's important to convey your love for them.
Yeah.
You know, it's not fair to be like, whatever, I don't have time for this. I have a life to live.
Yeah.
You know, like, again, make them feel safe to come forward because they're feeling vulnerable. So they need to know that you love them, even though they're taking time, and that you'll be there when they're ready.
Right.
That's it. Yeah. And a lot of times, the more pressure we put on that person to hurry up and come around, the longer it'll take. You know, and if we disconnect a bit, or detach, I should say, detach a little bit, it gives them the space to kind of breathe rather than like, all right, how about now? Do you feel better now? And they're like, can I have some privacy?
Now, these are all really, really good points that I know I'm going to definitely reflect on when I go home.
About my own life. I'm like, I'm going to go back and listen to this tonight.
And I know this might sound cheesy, but one of the most important relationships we'll ever have, I'm sure you guys heard this, is with yourself. So
I thought you were going to say with God. I was like,
I mean, that too. So what do you think we could do, kind of like self-reflection activities or questions that we should be asking ourselves every few phases of life, to kind of just better our selves for any past or future or present relationships? I know that's a very loaded question.
No, it's great.
Yeah.
You guys are, my brain is like going through gymnastics right now.
I'm going to work tomorrow and I'm like, oh my God, these girls.
She's going to be like, we're watching a documentary.
I
know. I think one of the best things that we can do is pay attention to our inner dialogue. Our like little, like the messages that we have about ourselves, the stories that we have about ourselves, and like really it's called co-consciousness, this idea of being aware of your thoughts, thinking about your thoughts, and so realizing situations where you're reacting in a way or feeling in a way that isn't aligned with who you are striving to be or who your best self is. And then really getting into the thick of that. Like is my thinking ego-based or is it higher self-based? Is it rooted in fear and like past pain and past trauma? And basically, is my ego lying to me about the reality of the situation? Or is it like higher level thinking that is devoid of ego, you know? So really kind of tuning into what is driving these thoughts that I have. Is it rooted in reality or is it rooted in anxiety? So being mindful of situations where anxiety, fear, ego, trauma, all these elements wreak havoc in how we think and how we make choices and how we act, and choosing consistently until it becomes pattern, until it becomes habit, consistently choosing to force yourself to go in a more healthy path. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
It's practice. And it's so, because again, the ego, the trauma, the anxiety often is what's familiar to us. And so to think in a higher way, in a healthier way, is profoundly uncomfortable.
It is.
You feel like you're lying to yourself.
And then maybe you already covered this, but I know, like, at least in a lot of South Asian communities, I'm sure it's prevalent in a lot of other communities, where, this is just an example, like a woman who's been raised, like, to just do her one job. She's really unhappy, but she's like, this is my life. She accepted it, but she still wants some change to happen and stuff. But she's like, no, I can't leave my husband, even though he's causing me, like, pain in this situation. What kind of tips do you have for that, I guess? It's like, you're stuck in a situation, you want change, but you're reluctant to change. If that makes sense.
I mean,
I don't know if that makes sense.
I feel like that's all of us.
Yeah.
In one form or another. Not to say that one woman's like painful marriage is the same as like
100%.
else.
Yeah, that was just an example. Yeah.
I mean, the biggest hurdles I think we go through in our growth, it's this constant tug of war between stability and change.
Okay.
And so stability is what's familiar, it's what we know, it's what feels stable, but it doesn't always serve us. And then the change is the unknown and the uncertain. And so we want different, but it's unfamiliar, so we don't like it. And then what is familiar isn't serving us, but it's familiar.
Got it.
And so it's always this like, and
blurred.
What'd you say?
Blurred.
Yeah. And so I think that's why a lot of times we just stick with the unhealthy thing that's so familiar.
Yeah.
So I think for people who are in situations that they want to change that they can't, it's really, I mean, as corny as it sounds, it really becomes a leap of faith. That's ultimately what it is you have faith. You take that one step of what's different and uncertain, but probably a million times better than what you have, and then you trust that it'll be okay.
It was interesting. I love how you keep saying familiarity.
Yeah, I can never say that.
I remember I was reading somewhere where there was a study done or something where basically majority of the people in that study, they said that they rather stay in a familiar situation even though it's like bad for them than to go to something that's just different, because that fear of change, of the unknown, what to expect, is just a lot. So I think that's something that we all should definitely pay attention to within ourselves, and like how you said, you have to go back to that dialogue, that narrative you're telling yourself.
It's why so many of us stay in relationships that we have no business being in, because we know it, and being single and starting over is like,
it's too daunting.
It's it's awful.
It is, but so is your relationship.
I mean, so I know like it's mostly relationships, but one thing I just wanted to ask you was like, this is not relationships, but it's like in a family setting. So like a lot of cultures, like, you know, they have where it's like always in your face, kind of a confrontation, just like that toxic environment. How, like, it's like for, like, this is for like, you know, people that can't, like kids or like students that are going to college, or someone who just can't move out, or it's especially like in certain cultures, you can't just be like, peace out, mom and dad, like, you know, you're just stuck, like it's just family, but it's a toxic environment. How do you confront them? Like, just what can you do, like as a student or as a person who's living at home? What can you do, like when it's always like at your face?
You change your script.
Ooh.
Because that environment is the way that it is, partially because you have a certain script in it. Not to blame, but like, what is your script that is feeding into that environment? You change it, and you know, it's the family is a system, right? Any change in that system is going to cause a change to the whole. So you tweak something over here and it has ripple effects. So you tweak yourself and see what happens, and pay attention to again your inner dialogue, and see, like, is the way that I'm thinking and speaking to myself, is it healthy, is it loving? Am I filtering other people's behaviors and the way that they talk to me? Am I filtering that through an unhealthy lens? Am I letting it reflect on how I view myself? Like, it really comes down to having a really strong sense of self and a strong compass, a strong core, so that whatever the storm is around you, it can only rattle you so much, because you're stronger than that.
I like that a lot.
There's a story in the scriptures of my faith, the Baha'i faith, that Abdul Baha, one of our central figures of the faith, he talks about how strong ships ride the waves, and weak ships allow themselves to be battered by the waves. And his advice is, be a strong ship and not a battered one. So
like
you
that.
ride those
that a
waves.
lot.
You don't let
I like
yourself
that.
get beat up.
I
Yeah.
like that
I
a
feel like
lot.
we're gonna have so many awesome quotes
I
from
know.
this.
That's not me though.
Yeah.
That's Uncle
No, I
Bob.
know.
It's like we posted
yeah.
and we're like, Dr. Nura.
Oh my god. We'll start getting all these messages. Excuse me. You know what I find helps sometimes in certain situations is what would you, if the situation was flipped and you were trying to help someone in the same position you're in, like what would you tell them? It sometimes helps. I don't know. I don't think it's an end all be all sort of type of strategy, but sometimes it helps because it kind of puts into perspective like what maybe you should be doing. So like if you have a friend that's in a bad relationship, or you're the person in a bad relationship and your friends are telling you, but it's like not sinking in. Sometimes I feel like it helps to think about what I would tell someone else,
Right.
but I feel like
sure.
it's kind of a hit or miss. Sometimes
I mean, it's always easier to give other people advice
Yeah,
than we take ourselves.
Yep.
I feel like it's
Yeah.
always easy to give people like the single girl always gives the best relationship
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it's like, nope, I don't follow my own advice.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so much easier
It's
to give the
tricky.
advice than to take it.
Yeah.
But I do think something that's helpful to think about is, again, in how we talk to ourselves.
Yeah.
Because they're, you know, I'm sure you guys have heard, like, would you talk to your best friend the way that you're talking to yourself?
Yeah. I like
And
that.
you would,
I like that a lot.
like, you would be speaking with so much love
Oh
and
yeah,
kindness
you
and
would be
support.
very kind to them, and I think this is something that I learned because I started therapy 2 years ago,
Good for you.
and you know at the time I didn't even like. 2 years gone by, like I've also realized that my sense of self-worth has built up, but that's because I'm in there and I'm talking about like XYZ things, and at first it was just I'm talking to my therapist, and then it kind of trickled into my life where I'm able to talk about certain things I would have never wanted to talk about with other people, but I'm at a place where I'm comfortable sharing. I'm not sharing because I think I have to.
Good for you.
So I feel like that, I mean, I feel like because therapy's worked for me, I'm like, everybody tried therapy. But I know like it's not something everybody wants to do or can do, etc. But for me, I feel like my sense of self-worth has really come from being able to talk to the therapist, but also talk to myself. I talk to myself all the time.
Yeah.
And I remember I think I said that once a long time ago and someone's like, weirdo. But I'm like, self-talk is literally such a
It's
great
so
way, especially
important.
like in the past when I've had panic attacks. Talking myself down now if I feel that way is such a great tool. So the dialogue you have with yourself is so important.
100%. And it's usually our self-talk that has gotten us to a low point, too.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Like,
yeah, because you
it
can talk
works
yourself
both
down
ways.
just
Yeah.
as much as you can talk yourself up.
Absolutely.
Basically, it's important to identify, like
Yeah.
you said, what we're talking about
Yeah.
to ourselves, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
Oh, yeah. Well, this might lighten the mood. Someone said, "What are some tips on meeting new people? Are there dating?
This is a show.
Are there any cool dating apps?
Oh,
any good
God.
ideas?"
Go
for it.
That's such a funny
We
shift
can give
that
our
can
2
do.
cents,
Yeah.
but we don't.
Yeah, well, why don't you give your 2 cents?
Oh, I was
Wait, what's
joking.
the-
Like,
What
what
was
are
the
tips on
question?
meeting new people?
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm a very talkative, like, social person, so I have a habit of just introducing myself and just talking to people.
Yeah.
So, like, if I'm at an event, I don't mind, like, putting myself out there just because, like,
Yeah.
what's the worst that can happen? Either you might meet someone really interesting or someone's just horrible and you're like, okay, cool.
So step out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, like I think
Love
stepping
it.
out of your comfort zone and be willing to talk to
Yeah.
people. I think that's a nice way because
Yeah.
sometimes you just make friends,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
those 2 dudes that at the Tempe Marketplace.
Oh
remember?
yeah, they were on our podcast.
I mean,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
clarify,
What?
like they weren't just random dudes. Like I mean,
At
they
the
were,
time
but
they were, yeah.
You met 2 dudes?
this is a very
Yeah.
PG conversation.
Yeah.
No, there was-
setting. I promise.
There's a podcast episode
Yeah.
that we actually had with these guys, but they're part of this yes movement where they say yes to, they have certain days where they just say yes to everything or they
Yeah.
put themselves out of their comfort zone. So we
Okay.
were at Tempe Marketplace and these guys approached us and wanted us to do the cha-cha dance with them. And we did it. And then we're like, this is a cool mental health tangent. So then
So we're sure they were on our podcast.
Yeah. So there you
Shout
go,
out
like
to-
meeting new people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Putting
Yeah.
yourself out there. Those guys
Yeah.
could have not done it because
Yeah.
it was a group of
Yeah.
girls, right?
Yeah.
Most of
Yeah,
us.
mostly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mostly girls.
So there were 2 guys and how many girls?
Like
4 or 5 girls.
But then we had 2 of our guy friends there.
Yeah,
too.
but like that's still intimidating,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
Like to walk up to a group
Yeah.
of girls
A
who
random stranger. We were just eating ice
and
cream.
we're like, sure, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Aw,
So it's
that's great.
fun. But yeah, I think putting yourself out there, getting out of your comfort zone, not being afraid to just say hello.
Yeah.
Sometimes you make someone's day by
Yeah.
doing that,
Yeah.
honestly. And I don't know about what dating apps are a good idea.
Yeah.
Because
No, I was just gonna say one thing my mom always said to me is like, you talk a lot, so like give the other person an opportunity to talk about themselves too. Like if I'm in a room, like I'll try to talk to everyone, and I can talk about pretty much anything, BS, whatever, like just, but also at the same time, it's like you kind of have to like allow them to see what their opinions are, and like kind of gauge off of that too. And that's something I've learned like over time, because before I wouldn't. It's like you know, like you just talk, but you don't listen, you know?
Yeah.
And so over the time, I've kind of learned to like, be like, well, like, okay, so you tell me, like, what do you do? Or,
Yeah.
you know, what do you think? And like, kind of like get that feedback from them as well.
Yeah.
So.
I'm just really shy.
yeah, she's our shy one.
I've come a long way since like 7 years ago.
But to be fair, she's the shyest one, but she
Yeah.
also has the most friends and such great
Yeah,
friends
she's
too,
so
like quality
awesome.
friends.
That's
So
awesome.
so even if she's shy, she
Yeah.
does a really good job.
Only
of
when
being
it
I
comes
love-
to guys.
I love how you guys are her friends, and you're like, she has the best friends.
Yes, guys.
Especially
She's surrounded by
Especially
amazing
Ariba and
people.
Love Us.
Yeah.
They're the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I think there's a couple things that come to mind. One piece of advice that a friend of mine observed that really, really hit home to me was put yourself in scenarios where you shine.
I like that.
So, like, what is it that when you do it, you feel at your best and you feel vibrant and like you shine? And the example that he gave was he's very happily married now and has like 50,000 children and whatever. But the example he gave was of himself. He, I mean, he's an attractive guy, but he's like, he's like, I'm not necessarily like some head turner that, gonna walk down the sidewalk and everyone's like, who's that model? He goes, but he could dance like nobody's business, and he could play the piano and sing.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And he's like, and sometimes I would just find a piano and I would play it, and the women would just like flock to the piano.
Okay.
And that's not why he did it. Like, I don't think he was like the Pied Piper with the piano, but that was his groove. Like that was where he felt at his best. So I think it's really about finding the thing that makes you the most comfortable in your own skin.
I love it.
And
I like that.
makes you glow.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. So
Yes.
that's a big thing.
Okay.
As far as dating apps, I'm not a fan, and I don't like them.
haven't tried them, but
Yeah, I can't speak.
never mind.
How do you hold on? I wanted to offer one more thing before I
Yes.
forgot. Another thing is that people like to feel seen. So I'm not a big fan of like shallow flirting, like, oh my god, your biceps. Like, don't do that. Please
Same
don't do
here.
that.
Yeah, I don't.
But complimenting someone on something unique and something that actually takes observation to notice, I think can go a really long way. So rather than just being like, you're so tall, or whatever. Like, do you work out? Like, don't do that.
Like when they're not funny, like, you're so funny.
Don't lie. But but if you notice something special about them or something unique about them, be like, wow, you're really giving, or you really care about people, don't you? Or you have such a happy sense of humor. Like, notice something unique. And I think that is just like music to anybody's ears, is to feel like, oh my god, this person just saw me. Like, those are the compliments I still remember, when people notice something about me that I don't expect them to see.
Yeah.
It catches you
You're
off
like,
guard.
oh, you saw that?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you work out?
Well, what is one advice you can give to someone who is on the dating advice? Like
Yeah,
dating
dating
out.
out. Oh,
sorry,
what?
sorry, yeah. I kept looking over to make sure like our time's not running out, but so yeah, what one advice?
Use it carefully, I would say. Like don't let it be your crutch. Use it sparingly, and don't always be thinking that the grass is greener. Like I think it's very easy to get caught up in that, and like maybe you're on a date with someone and you're like, nah, they're not really like a 10 out of 10 or like a 7 out of 10. I bet I can go find an 8 or a 9 or a 10 out of 10. Like I think dating apps give us the illusion of abundance.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you have that illusion of abundance, it makes it much harder to be content with what's staring you in the face.
Because you always think there's something
I
better,
always
better,
say that like
better.
about dating, and it's like always finding the next best thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a library. You know, look at something, you're like, oh, it doesn't look good. You put it back.
Yeah.
You pick out another book.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think it makes relationships and it makes people disposable.
Yeah.
So I
feel the same way.
So yeah. So at least just be aware.
Yeah. Well, one tip I think I can give.
Yeah,
I haven't really done much, but I guess I remember you saying this at the event that you facilitated a few weeks ago, and I think it was something about like there was a question about like opposites attracting, and I think if I remember correctly, you said like it's best when you have common values that are similar, right? So on that note, I think it'll be good if you're like really, really looking for someone, maybe go to like an event that's tailored to your passion. So if you're all about sustainability, go join a sustainability club. Maybe you'll find a like-minded individual or something like that. So I guess be proactive if you really, really want to find someone.
So I have to go to Comic-Con.
Yeah. I'm going to go to Comic-Con.
I don't know where I'd go. Probably a stand-up comedy.
That's not a bad thing. Well, and then but then we start talking about like what are good date ideas.
Okay.
And you know, the biggest piece of advice that I give people is like you need to see how this person handles stress. And so in our dating world, the way that it's structured today, we have this like very safe bubble of like you know, like dinner and a movie, and like you don't really learn anything about them at all. You're just at this weird audition over dinner where you're talking about things that you're just auditioning for the role of boyfriend or girlfriend, and then you go to a movie where you sit in the dark and just stare at a screen. So I think any kind of activity that would stress the other person out is actually the best thing you can do. It might be tough for a first date, but like maybe a second date.
Escape rooms.
That's advice that I've given. I think it's genius.
That's actually good.
Yeah.
I haven't got that.
Anything
like on a hike, if we're like go on a hike and to see like what if they're scared of heights and like you're just at the top of a mountain, that's a stressful
you're
situation.
like, how do you feel now? I mean, it's possible,
scared of heights.
but it's
I'm
actually
so scared of heights. So.
It's tricky though because adrenaline actually induces love. So you don't necessarily want adrenaline, you want stress.
I'll climb the tallest mountain now.
You want scenarios that bring out their ugly side. Not high adrenaline.
I like how you brought up stress, but I think anger is also a good thing to know in any relationship.
That's the ugly side.
Yeah, so I think escape room would probably actually that's a good thought.
Thank us for your next
date
suggestion.
Because like all of us bring our dates to the escape room.
Okay, go do stuff like that.
Yeah. No, it's true. Or just like be like, oh, I have to babysit my sister's kids. Oh no, can you help me?
For sure.
Yeah.
Be like, no.
Yeah, but that's what you do.
Yeah, no, I actually
like
that a
it.
lot.
And you should see that before you get attached. Like here we get attached and then we like learn about them.
Yeah, I feel
not
like
healthy.
And I know a lot of like women do this. They kind of hold back on like when they know what they want and what they're looking for, but they don't say it to the guy right away because it's like they're afraid that he's gonna run off. Is it good to kind of hold back and wait for the right moment, or just be straight up like, this is who I am, this is what I want? Like, I mean, when's the right time? Like, I guess that's.
I think there needs to be a little bit of a balance. Like, I think that there should be, like, I think I saw Brené Brown talk about this in one of her talks. I think where it's like little sips of vulnerability at a time.
Yeah. I
think we need to use wisdom. Like, I don't think it's wise to just in one go on the first date and be like, here's everything about me.
I have seen girls who are like, straight up, this is who I am, this is what I want, and then there's some that are like, ooh, maybe I'll wait until like months later, and then they'll bring it up, and then it just doesn't work out, and then they're heartbroken, like because that's not
if it's a deal breaker, like if it's a potential huge deal breaker, then the sooner the better. Again, I don't know, like the first date, there needs to be some room where you decide if you're even like interested in seeing where this is going. So it might be a lot for the first date, but sooner than later. I don't think, because the other piece of it is you don't want this person to feel like you're keeping secrets. Like if I found out somebody was keeping secrets from me for a long time, that's manipulation. So I think you have to use wisdom, but the sooner the better.
No, I agree. Okay, so as we wrap things up, what is one thing out of many things I'm sure that are in your head that you hope people listening will take away from this conversation?
Oh, jeez.
Covered so much.
I know.
And honestly, I as much as we want to keep talking about this, we can do this for hours.
Seriously.
Yeah, I love this stuff, obviously.
We'll have you back for sure.
Thank you. Yeah. One thing, so many cliches are going through my head. Like, just love yourself. No, I think I think the healthier we are, the because this is another common saying both in my faith and just in research, like, is that like seeketh like. So if you are looking for this like ideal person, not perfect person, because that's not a thing, but if you're looking for this like specific type of person, you also need to think about, like, am I that person's type? Like, that person that I want, am I the kind of person that they would want? And work on yourself. So I think there's always so much room for improvement in ourselves, and I think the more we work on ourselves and we heal things that need to be healed and grow in the ways that we need to grow, the better of a match that we attract to ourselves.
Right.
So it sounds cliche, but I think it was Paul Newman who said this. Can't believe I'm quoting Paul Newman. But he said something like, rather than looking for the one, you should focus on making yourself the one.
I love that. That's so nice. I can't believe he said it.
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah, I like that.
I really
it was
like
either
that.
Paul Newman or Robert Redford. I think it was Paul Newman.
It's some dude that just it works.
But it makes a lot of sense. So like, rather than being outward focused on like who am I going to be with, it's more about like, who am I becoming? And who you become is what you draw.
That's such a nice place to end.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We're definitely having you back.
For sure.
And to our followers and listeners, definitely follow Dr. Nura's Instagram page.
Yes.
And, what's
it's at Dr. Nura Mowzoon. So DrNuraMowzoon.
Yes, and we will make sure that we tag you in everything.
Yeah, everything.
Sure.
Tag me in everything,
including that Penn Badgley comment.
Oh yeah.
You'd be like, Penn. Wait, hello, Penn. That's so funny.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking time out.
No, I loved it.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode, and remember to soch your soul and pass along good vibes to those around you, because the more good we do, the more good we become.